Hi, this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy video blog week 11 of 2013. We're going to continue the discussion started last week about the immune system acting as a digestive system. And we got into the tangent of speaking of, or I did at least, speaking of raw foods, the value of eating more raw, the value of really chewing our food better, and how this affects how our body grows and repairs versus tearing down. And it's one of those things that the part of the education, and I think that where we need to start is being okay with where we're at. And I know that when I began my path over 20 years ago, eating better, the more raw food I introduced, raw food is inherently cleansing, and raw juices being more cleansing, and water and herbal teas not being as cleansing per se. The body, if you give it the conditions, it can and will heal. If we go on that premise, and based on observation over 20 years and based on reading and research and exploration, I could definitely say I would agree that if you provide the conditions for the body to heal, it can and will, unless there is a lot of damage done. And so what happens is, ideally, I alluded to an interview at the college radio station here last weekend about ultimately our digestive system is our immune system. And if our digestive system is our immune system, then ultimately our choices are our immune system, which is somewhat interesting. So if we're constantly eroding our digestive system by taking foods in too large of quantities, by hurrying and not chewing properly, by eating when we're under stress, i.e. eating in the car, which I had a situation today that I felt like I was in a hurry, and thank God my girlfriend reminded me not to eat in the car, because I definitely felt like I wanted to. And then I sat down and chewed my food slowly and mindfully, and then left, and actually felt a lot better. And chewed on some raw carrots in the car, which was a lot better than trying to eat the bowl of food. So since the stomach meridian begins on the face, and we're chewing, how we chew sends a message to the rest of our body and our nervous system about how to set the nerves, because there's a nerve that comes out of the brain, one of the cranial nerves, and it's the vagus nerve, and it runs down and goes into the digestive tract. So we have this feedback loop. What is our brain saying to our gut? And we have a gut brain, the enteric nervous system, and what's that saying to our brain? So ideally, we want to chew our food slowly and mindfully to be in a relaxed parasympathetic, not sympathetic, nervous system dominance. Because if we're in sympathetic, it means we're in fight or flight. And in that case, our blood goes to our muscles to run away from the perceived invader, and it does not go to our digestive system, so that's another strike against us. And the more strikes we have against our digestive system, then we're not going to absorb our food properly. And remember again, the villi in our gut, we have these villi in these places that if you stretch them out, you can cover a tennis court with all that tube in our gut. And so what tends to happen is we eat too much cooked food, we eat too quickly, we eat the wrong combinations, we eat too much, we snack between meals, and then what happens is we get this food that, if you think about it, I was listening to Dr. Sawyer, who I work with in his chiropractic office, just giving the analogy of, so you eat, say, meat and rice, and maybe you're really good and you have some vegetables with that meal. And so ideally that meal goes from mouth to anus in about 24 hours. So if you have, whatever you have for dinner should ideally come out dinner the next night. And if that food is in this nice warm tube, because in our gut, it's not part of us yet. In our gut, food is not part of our being. It's still outside of our body. And a lot of us don't think about that. And I remembered his point last night, and it's not something that I remind people of often enough is that that food is basically in a warm, moist environment, right? 98.6 moist, and if you put a steak and some rice and some vegetables in a little fog chamber, you know, nice and humid, nice and warm at 98.6, you let it sit there for 24 hours, what's going to happen to it? You know, it's not going to be very palatable after 24 hours would be my guess. So think about if it's sitting in there longer than a day or it's not digested properly, because, you know, stuff, if it's chewed properly, you have big chunks of food broken down to little tiny, tiny pieces, and that's the best thing we can do. And it's one of the best therapies that's within your control. And one of the things I try to empower with my clients is, again, what are the things we have control over? Then we can make sure our food's acidic enough, which is also eating it when we're relaxed, because then we can mount the hydrogen response or the acidic response to get the food broken down in the acid. And again, that's not so much breaking it down as breaking down the protein chains and setting the stage for proper mineral absorption and protein absorption in the stomach. And so I'm spending a little bit of time on this because if our digestive system is not incorporating and digesting food properly, then we've got this immune stress from all around here in the gut. Got this lymph and all these immune cells lying around here, making sure that we're going to be protected without getting unassimilated, undigested food into our system, so to speak. And so what happens then is if we're incorporating undigested food into our tissues or the wrong kinds of foods, then our immune system's job is to patrol the tissues, patrol up here, around here in the tissues, and the immune system will actually begin to digest decaying matter and floating bits of debris in the bloodstream, in the lymph, in the tissues, and because that's its job. And I remind my clients, like, you see like turkey tails growing on trees, you see snails, you see things in nature that break down decaying matter. Remember the analogy, food is not part of our body until it's actually assimilated. And if it's sitting in our gut for a long time, it's going to begin to decay. And then think about if you have some decaying matter on your cheek, eventually your cheek is going to begin to decay. And so it is inside the body. The immune system and various microorganisms will begin to break down that dead and dying tissue. So when I say the immune system acting as a digestive system, our immune system, that's its job, along with, of course, microorganisms, but we don't hear a lot of fanfare about this. And I think the thing to walk away with is that make sure you're getting your bowels moving every day, make sure you're eating a little bit more raw food, 51% ideally. If you cannot digest raw food well and you're having digestive reactions to it, then as I had to, you just do your best. Incorporate some digestive enzymes and you cook your food and you don't worry about it. Try to keep moving a bit towards more raw in the warmer seasons. If you have to have raw dairy, raw cheeses, raw milk, even undercooked meat, then you do so. And that's another way to incorporate more enzymes into your body. Then you begin to incorporate more raw fruits and vegetables. And as you do so, and people don't talk a lot about raw grains, but raw grains are completely valid too. You could soak them overnight or 24 hours, throw off the soaking water, and then eat those. And I've been telling my clients to mess around with a little bit of raw potato in their salads because raw potatoes are a great source of vitamin C, which you don't hear a lot about. So you find ways to get a little bit more raw in your diet. You might do bean sprouts instead of cooked beans. Not that I'm a fan necessarily of a diet strictly of beans and grains. I think that for a lot of people that's not going to work really well. But just getting more raw in our diet I think is, again, I'm not a raw foodist, but I do espouse eating more raw food because the results are definitely there. And as I've gotten healthier over my 20 years, I just crave raw. I feel better on raw. And most of my diet is raw in the warm seasons. And even in the cold seasons, I still, probably far and away more than 50% of my diet, following those guidelines. I just feel better. And I'm not saying that you should begin that as an extremist just to jump in. Some people do. I was an edge walker, and I tended to do these sorts of things. But I'm not suggesting you do, but we don't want our immune system acting as a digestive. And you remember, Our body is always doing the best it can given its circumstances. We're leading a liver cleanse right now for Health Alchemy. That's one of the things we're doing, is helping to clear out waste. One of the things we don't hear about is how we can accumulate microorganisms up in our sinuses, in our jaw, in and around our jaw, in and around the sinuses behind the ears, in and around the ears, and in various cavities in our lung tissue, in and around our chest. So I really am a fan of, like, let's start cleansing, getting our gut cleansed out, our filters, our liver, our kidney, and our spleen, filtering organs cleared out. Then our immune system will begin doing its job as a digestive to clear out some of the microorganisms that are elsewhere in the body. And we see long-standing stuff that have been in people's bodies for 20, 30 years. I myself had the mumps on this side over here, and I've been getting a series of breakouts and even a scab that didn't want to heal right here on this side. I picked that the other day and it bled like a lot. And so there was a series of pimples my girlfriend was pointing out to me, and little tiny boils that never would make a head. But this is where my body finally was able to gather enough layers have been peeled away, so to speak, that this is my theory, that it was just beginning to work on this area. And believe it or not, there's these lymph nodes. This one's actually a lot less swollen on this side now. A lot less swollen, remarkably so, maybe down by 50%. And they've always, both of these right here have always been a bit swollen, which tells me that there's been a chronic drain of stuff. And so keep that in mind, that the body's always doing the best it can given its circumstances, and our immune system can and will act as a digestive in our tissues, in and around the gut, if we're, so quote-unquote, decaying from the inside out. And the good news is that we have our choices and our own empowerment to make things better. And sure, we have a lot of temptations and things around us and distractions and media hype, but ultimately our choices are in our own hands, and we can sort of buckle up and change the programming about not focusing on what we can't have anymore, the programming of the white flour pizza, the white rice, the sugar, and say, well, what can I have? And the bounty of nature is something that we can focus on. Fruits and vegetables, by far and away vegetables, have been found to be, when they're at least 50 up to 70% of the volume of the food we eat, thinking volume, not calorie-wise, then we tend to be a lot healthier. So it's one of the focuses on the liver cleanse, is to get people to just begin that process. And for those who have been cleansing more than once, like I myself have been trying off and doing various cleansing for 20 years, and paradoxically enough, I have gained weight by doing alternating cleansing and eating well. So our liver cleanse is beginning this coming Sunday. It's Wednesday right now, and we're just getting the first preparatory week going now, getting people their shopping list and recipes. So this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy signing off on week 11 video blog 2013. That can be reached at Health Alchemy, HealthAlchemy, healthalchemy.com. It'll also be listed on the section just below this YouTube. Have a beautiful day, and look forward to seeing you next week and in person.